welcome back to another lap guide video on the Coach Dave Academy channel. My name is Bart, and today we'll be taking the FIF 4 car on iRacing around the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. Here's the hot lap. Alright, so crossing the line now into the first corner at Spa, which is the source. Quite a tricky hairpin here. Very important in terms of your lap time, just because it's such a long run after this. Obviously you have the famous Rouge, not really a corner in this car, we'll get to that in a second. But just, you got this long straight beforehand and afterwards, and the Camel straight up the hill. So, and it is ever so slightly uphill. Once you actually get onto the Camel straight as well, so really important to get a good run out of here. Okay, with that in mind, fifth gear, breaking down to second gear. Tricky on references here because it's hard to see the boards. They're quite far to the left-hand side of the screen, but you do have this red line in front of us, and that's kind of a good reference in terms of judging your distance based on that. It's also not too long a braking zone, like you should be looking to apex fairly early, but you know you're going to be braking after the 100-meter board, before the 50-meter board, pretty much where that red line is. You're braking pretty much, if you can see, just on the edge of the screen. Again, depends on if you have triples and whatever. But you can see this little orange gap in the barriers where a marshal would potentially be. That's probably a good reference to start, I'd say. The most important part here is making sure we're getting all the braking down the straight line. Be full in the left-hand side of the track, so left tire's on the white line here. Being perfectly straight when you hit the brake, lots of brake pressure. Smack the crap out of the brake, all right? Really hard brake pressure. Maintain that right until you want to start turning in, and then as usual with this car, you don't want to be combining, so you don't want to have a brake on while you're turning into the corner. That's just going to cause you to lock up and then you'll never turn in. So brake really efficiently, maintain that high brake pressure. You can see I'm down to like third gear, almost second gear now, so I'm still high on the brake pressure, and now I'm going to turn in. And as soon as I do that, look how quickly I decrease the brake pressure. Okay, still trailing the brakes in very slightly, but very quick off. So that's the main thing. Really efficient straight line, quickly bleed off when we start to turn in. Okay, get it turned in, carry a decent amount of speed here, okay? Being a low power car, I know it's a corner where the exit's important, but compared to like a LMDH or a GT car in general, it's not just about getting on the throttle early here, it's about rolling enough speed up to the point where we pick up the throttle, so keep that in mind as well. Throttle pretty much on this corner should always be You want your right tires on the curb. You see on this lap, I actually get them over the inside curb, but at least fully on the red and white, I'd say, with your right-hand side tires. Kind of hook up, and then as you hit that, that's when you pick up the throttle. So you can see at this point, almost full throttle now as we come off it, and then come out of the steering as quick as you can. Unload the steering. So if you look in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you can see as soon as the revs come up, about now, I just come out of the steering lock. Otherwise, the car's just going to slide, and then you're going to lose momentum, and you're also scrubbing the tire, and you're not traveling in a straight line, so the car's not accelerating. So we can just get the lock out, then it helps us accelerate that a little bit extra down the straight. Okay, in terms of track limits, you can use it until your right tires are on this the edge of this curb. So you can be very, very aggressive here on exit. So keep that in mind, yeah? All right, so now going down the hill towards the Rouge, come over to the right-hand side of the track, shorten the distance, and prepare ourselves for where we're going to be on the entry to a Rouge. Fully on the right-hand side, up to the wall. Looking up the hill now. So we want to be facing, let's say, this way when we get to the bottom, down to the bottom of the corner here. And the reason for that is we just want to reduce the angle of the part of Rouge that's more important, which is the top of the corner here. And so we're not scrubbing the wheel, which makes a big difference in a car like this. We're not loading the car unnecessarily. So we're keeping the car traveling in a straight line. And that means we'll be faster up the hill. And we don't also end up taking too much curb over the crest. So with that in mind, like I say, come from the right-hand side, be as late as you can while still getting the car kind of positioned nicely here. Take this left-hand curb. Don't put your floor, so don't put the middle of the car on it because they will just bottom out on this bump. Just put your left tires on the red and white. Middle of the car, pretty much on the white line here. You can see in line here with this barrier. I usually just line it up based on this point. You can see where the white line is here, basically in line with that. And start to turn in slowly, quite early. Like you've got to kind of preempt it a little bit, but fairly smoothly here. Right-hand side, just touch your right wheels on the curb. You can see just the bottom of it. You don't want to be on this higher part. That'll just kill time. Unnecessary there. The curb gets a bit abrasive higher up. And then as soon as you can come out of the steering lock, as I do now over the crest, come up the steering so you can see my steering's dead straight. And this is what we want. The steering dead straight as we go over the hill here. And again, I just want the left tires running up to this crest where this white line is here. We don't really want to hit that, just our left tires taking all the red and white. And that way we're not going to kind of bounce and lose time, bottom out over the curb. And we're going to have the wheel as straight as possible. Don't run on this right-hand curb. There's a massive dip at the end of it. You'll lose a lot of time, so please don't run on that. Just run up to the white line here, like I've done there. Keep the car on the right-hand side here, shorten the distance, and then reduce the steering here. So that's seems like a fairly simple section and easy to take flat out, right? But in this car, it's still important to get those little things right because the exit's so important. It could be worth a few tenths. All right, so braking for the com now, super challenging part of the track here. Down to fourth gear. You can please brake on this curbing on the left. You can see it's actually flat for some reason on this model. Up to this black line, it's just painted tarmac, so use all that. Don't treat this like curb, treat it like racetrack, so use all that. Braking reference is after this white line. We've got nothing really else going on, I'm sorry to say. Maybe you got this red mark on the left to brake before that, but to be honest, you've got to just judge it based on distance, I'd say, from looking into the apex, which is part of what makes it so tricky. Not much reference-wise into this corner. Again, very hard braking, but not sustained for very long. Bleeding out quickly here as I've got to turn in early. If you turn in late, you'll just miss the corner. So hard on the brakes, off quite quick, down to fourth gear. Get the right-hand tires hooked onto the right curb, you see there. Just about making the right-hand curbing. I've carried a lot of speed in, so it's quite tricky on this occasion. Then able to pick up throttle about now, just as you kind of come away from the first curb. And then get the car hooked onto this left curb is the most important one. Using all of this, even this bit of Astro here, this is not an off-track, by the way, so it's fine as long as you're not on the grass. This section is all about two things, really. Like, how much speed can I carry in? Braking late is not really that important, but carry as much minimum speed as possible. So my slowest point is as high as I can make it. That's the amount of momentum you carry through a corner. And then also how quickly can I get to full throttle, right? So I've tried to carry lots of speed in and then full throttle now. Especially in the low power car like this, if you can carry a bit more speed on entry, it makes a big difference because it's hard to pick that speed back up again through the rest of the corner. That's really why we want to abuse the curbs. You don't need to bring the car fully over to the left to prepare like you would in a GT car or something heavier or with more power. You can see I'm almost all the way to the right-hand side of the track here, and I'm still able to take this final right flat. I don't even need to take the curb. It's just unnecessary kind of bouncing around. Run the car out into the exit curb. You don't want to run any wider than this. If you run kind of the middle of the car over this gap here between the curb and the green, you will get off track. So just watch out for that. And if you drop a wheel in this bit of the AstroTurf as well. So keep that in mind. And you'll bottom out badly on that curb. Okay, braking now down to Bruxelles, or Rivage as it's sometimes known. Braking marker is pretty much exactly when this curb starts, which is quite easy for us to remember. Not braking super hard here, just because it's easy to lock up. It's about 70% brake, let's say. Then bleeding out quite quickly because you've got to turn in early. And again, with this car, like I say, don't combine. So don't brake and turn. If you think I have to turn, you've got to come off that brake pedal really quick. So as soon as I turn in, because we need to stay near the white line here, we don't want to drift away from it. Got to start dropping the brake pressure, just trailing in really slightly. See, at this point in the corner, I've just got a tiny bit of brake pressure on. That's not really trying to turn the car. It's just trying to stop the car. It's just trying to keep the weight on the nose, which is just trying to keep the front turning into the corner, right? And just start to pick up throttle now. As you can see, the exit. When you pick up throttle here, try and get onto full throttle fairly quickly. It's not a corner where you go like step, full. You should be fairly soon after you pick up throttle, you should be getting to full throttle just because the car wants to push into understeer, and the slower you are to full throttle, the more understeer you're going to create yourself. So just keep that in mind. Try and get onto full throttle pretty quick because that'll actually help rotate the car a little bit. Okay, run the car out. You shouldn't be on the exit curve there, but just onto the white line. It should be hard work to get back to the right. If it's not hard work to get back to the right, you haven't pushed that previous corner enough. Okay, all the way back onto the right-hand side of the track here, using the curbing even. Don't brake very hard here because there's not much grip and it's quite unstable, but we're just using this to open up the corner and carry as much speed as possible downhill into no name. You can use this inside curb, as you see I've done here. You can also miss it. For me, it was kind of between the two. You can't mount the curb like you can in some, again, some GT cars and things like that. But certainly just I feel like taking the left-hand side tires just on the lip, just kind of on top of the red and white is quite good, especially on the fixed setup where it was wanting to understeer quite a bit. Very soft brake, and basically on throttle the whole time as well. The brake more than anything is to help turn the car. We don't just slow the car down much here. It's just we're trying to carry as much momentum as possible while getting the nose in. So that's why I've just done a little bit of a tap on the brake just to try and rotate the car at this speed. Full throttle again very early. This is another corner where if you're slow to throttle, you're going to create a lot of understeer. So please keep that in mind. Especially on the fixed setup, the car's going to want to understeer. So that means the front axle is going to slide first, okay? So get onto throttle faster. Don't just chuck more steering lock on. All right. Try and get the steering lock off as quick as possible there. Really important to release the car in this exit. In terms of track limits, as long as your left-hand tires are on the red and white, you're okay. Just make sure you get back before this exit. Super easy to get an off track just by dropping a tire on this little bit of sand on that exit, so keep that in mind. All right, heading now into Pouan, one of the coolest corners in the world. Really dodgy curb on the entry here. Fortunately, we don't have to brake very hard in this car, so you shouldn't get spun out or anything like that. Ride this curb on the entry. It just helps in terms of opening up what is a really high-speed corner. Really important to do so here. Really soft on the brakes, okay? Don't feel like you have to brake very hard here. Just, I'd say on the early side, you see I'm braking, I think, fairly early. If it feels like you're braking really late and kind of chucking the car into the corner, you're probably over-pushing the entry. It's much more important in Pouan to carry more speed in, but maybe bring the braking back, so brake a little bit softer. You see here, quite a smooth brake, not trying to upset the platform of the car, not trying to like move it around too much, so it's pitching and moving around on the entry to the corner. Nice and smooth on the brakes. Down to 5th gear. Now you just want to bring the car. You can clip the inside curb in this car. Most cars you wouldn't want to, but ideally you just want to kiss the white line like this, all right? Just at this point in the corner. It's a bit hard to show you exactly where, but if you do enough, you'll kind of get a good idea for where the indentation is in this part of the corner, in the camber. And then from there, you should be able to pick up the throttle fairly well. So carry as much momentum as possible. So just keep trying to go softer and softer on the brakes until you basically push wide. Don't try to go much later. Later doesn't really gain you that much there. And then again, when you get on throttle, you can see here I'm taking a little while to get to full, but you do want to try and get it on. And also the other thing is here, I'm working really hard to try and get steering lock off. So if you look in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you can see I'm trying to get lock off, as much as possible. But it's always a fight here because you don't want to take too much extra track. You can run wider than this, so as long as the middle of the car is over this edge of the red and white curve, you won't get off track. But it's a bit bumpy for this car to run wide on this, and you can get taken off into the runoff area. So I like to just run it so you've got the right-hand side tires on the red and white. Okay, bring the car nicely over to the left-hand side. Try to avoid putting too much steering lock on. See there, I was smooth and let it run out a bit, but don't try to let it take too much distance either, so there's a bit of a balance there. That's why I don't want to go into the runoff area. All right, so braking now, get fully back to the left-hand side, braking for the Piff Paff or Fagner chicane S section. Probably my favorite corner of the track. Down to 4th gear. Really tricky here. So it's a very aggressive brake, but it's quite late. It should be late. If you're early here, you get punished a lot. And what I mean by that is if you brake early, you're probably going to turn in early. Your slowest point, the corner, is going to come early. And you're going to meet the inside curb early, which is about here. And if you do that, we'll get to that in a moment, it really messes up the exit, which is far more important, as well as the amount of speed you carried in. So you're rewarded by being late here. So how late can you be, right, while still keeping the car under control and carrying good entry speed? So we'll see here. And then the brakes now. Harden the brakes at 80%, but only for a really short period of time where we have high amounts of peak pressure. Quickly down to 4th, get down the gears quickly, turn the car in, come off the brake, bleed off the brake, and see how late I meet this inside curb. That's the priority, okay? We don't want to meet until about here. The reason why is because, like I said, if you meet it early, you'll get pushed out wide earlier. You just get the wrong entry angle into this corner, and it doesn't prepare you for what's coming next, which is far more important in this case. Okay, so we really want the car to be as close to the white line as possible at the end of this curbing. So you can see I'm pretty close here. That's super important for opening up this section, right? Maybe I could have even done a better job. And this occasion was pretty good. I carried a lot of speed in. When you reach the inside curb, you have to pick up the throttle. And what I mean by that is if you don't, you're just going to keep turning and then just kind of sit there on the inside curb. You don't really want to do that, right? So basically, as soon as you hit the inside curb, that's a message to say, okay, I've got to start picking up throttle. And that's why it's important to try and delay that as much as possible. Then we don't have to brake or lift a huge amount into the next left-hander coming up. So there's, you can see there going up to full throttle. And they're just lifting, part lift there. For me, down to about 70-80% throttle. And then if you can hook it on this inside curb, it can be quite good. At least just touch it like I have here. Should be a lot of lock on at this point. I didn't quite get it flat. Ideally, get it flat. It is difficult though, because sometimes if it's too easy to take flat, you haven't carried enough speed through the first part. So there is a bit of a compromise there. But generally, the aim is to try and get that as close to flat as possible. It should basically be right on the edge. Every single lap is kind of what you want it to be like. All right. Force yourself out wide here. Again, come off the steering on the exit. As long as your left-hand tires are on the red and white, you won't get off track. But once again, a bit like Lecom exit and No Name, you need to get back. It's very easy to get off track here. I think it's the middle of the car on this white line. All right, back. Use all the left-hand side of the curbing here. It's Stavolo entry. Just touch it again. Soft on the brakes. If you're hard on the brakes, you'll kind of upset the car because you're turning the whole time. You can see I just have a little kind of dab on the brakes, 40% or so, then quickly bleed out so I can turn in early. If I hold the brake, it's just going to push on into understeer and slide the front tires. Get the car on the inside curb. Doesn't need to be all over this higher part of the curb. Again, like maybe in some GTs and things like that. Just aim for this bit, the cambered bit, and this little red and white section of the curbing is much better in this F4 car. The other thing as well is I feel like compared to other cars, you're probably doing everything a little bit earlier. So softer on the brakes, come off, carry more speed, and start to pick up throttle early, carry the momentum, start to pick up the speed because this exit, very important, and we're not a very fast car with a lot of power, so we need to gun throttle early to try and carry that speed, okay, down the straight. Force yourself wide, use all that exit, look up early here, super important as well, makes a big difference. Look up for this exit, use all the exit, you can pretty much run to the edge there. It's pretty hard, but pretty much if your right tires are on the red and white, you'll be okay. This is right in the limit. If you run the car fully out, not on the gravel, but fully out until you're on edge of touching it, you will go off track. So keep that in mind. You can't use all this curving. That's pretty much the limit there. So if you ever get confused why you're getting off track, that's why. Try and bring the car quickly back over to the right. If you stay out, the bumps get quite bad as you turn right, and it just stalls the car, so it bottoms out, and then the car doesn't accelerate down the straight. So if you can bring the car nicely over, it's a bit tricky because if you don't want to swerve back to the right, but you just want to kind of, a bit like Watkins Glen exit turn 1, you want to kind of make your way over to the right without getting caught in the curving too much. You pretty much want to be on the white line here when you start turning into the second part of Stavolo, which is now. So yeah, this nice little transition. I kind of aim for that bit there. Getting the camber. This is flat out, but once again, there's a little bit of time to be gained just by reducing the distance a little bit. Keep it to the right-hand side, being smooth on the steering. You can see, same thing here, smooth on the steering again. Watch out, there's a bit of a bump here that can sometimes get you. Didn't on this lap, but sometimes it can be a bit weird there, so watch out for that. Bring the car over to the right. smooth through Blanchimont. Shouldn't be a corner at all in this car. Only thing I'm going to say is don't use the exit curb. Can only slow you down. Just don't use it, okay? Smooth on the steering, all the track up to that point. Don't touch that curb, no point. And I, for Spa on this track model, generally like to point the car like that. You can see this is light here. That's kind of where I'm aiming for on diagonal, and then I cut back rather than being parallel with the white line. So I'm aiming to be here, and I'm aiming to reach the top of the curb. Well, not the sausage curb, but the red and white curb about there. So it's up to you. I just like this technique. I find it opens up the corner a lot. No real references. Definitely braking after that white line we went past. Definitely braking well before the start of the curbing there. So, you know, let's say that's 150. It's around about 100 meters, but unfortunately we don't have much of a reference for that. You can kind of use certain brakes in the wall on the left-hand side, the barrier, and you've got some marks on the track, but it's one of those corners that's always tricky for judging the braking. Very hard on the brakes initially, down to second gear, straight line. Most important thing here is not actually just being super late in the brakes. It's probably the second most important thing, but it's just keeping the car nicely, the platform nice and steady as we turn in. What I mean is not like over pushing the entry and having the car out of control as it goes over the rise. So you're not fighting the car all the way over the top. And then you're not braking so hard that you kind of just push into understeer and slide the fronts again. So if we can just kind of open up the corner fully and allow ourselves to carry speed so we can bleed off quickly when we turn in, so we should pretty much be off the brake at this point. And using all the track on the right-hand side, carry as much speed as possible up the hill here on the right-hand side. And this helps us for the exit. So we can roll lots of speed and position well. It means that we get a good exit here. You can see I barely brake, if at all. I'm just braking probably a tiny bit, similar to... but no name. We're just using the bit of brake to help get some weight on the nose, help rotate the car. Use all the curbing up to the sausage curb once again. I like to be nice and aggressive on the throttle pedal out of there, up to 50% really quickly. Don't be worried about that. If you're spinning on exit here, it's because you're keeping the lock on. It's not because you're getting on throttle too early. It's most likely because you're just keeping the lock on, okay? So if you position well, you can initially get on the throttle quite quickly, but when the revs start to climb, you can hear the revs start to climb. You've got to come out of the steering lock like I do there, okay? And got to open up the corner. Otherwise you will lose the rear. And you can run it out here. I'd recommend probably keeping half the car on the... It can be quite an aggressive off track, even if it says, you know, you keep your tires on the red and white, so just keep that in mind. Bring the car over to the left-hand side before the curb ends. Shortest run to the line, and that's a lap at Spa. So that takes us towards the end of the video now. If you have any questions, please put them in the comment section below. And you can also check out the Coach Dave Academy Discord in the YouTube video description. My name is Bart, and I'll see you next week. See ya.